Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into this week's edition of Stop, Look, and Listen. I'm your host, LeTroy Gardner. This week, we have a special guest whose mission is to shine a light on the hidden crisis of child bedlessness. We have author and founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, Luke Mickelson. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Hey, thanks for having me, LeTroy. It's good to be here.
Oh man, it's a pleasure to have you. Just the work that I've read about. I mean, it's something that is truly needed, and
Mm.
the yeoman's effort is commendable.
Oh, well,
Um,
thanks.
yeah. So you grew up in Kimberly, Idaho. Like,
Hmm.
just give us a background of
Yeah.
your upbringing and how that shaped and molded you into, being such a pillar in the community and um, developing these leadership qualities.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I don't know about a pillar, but I'll, you know, yeah, I grew up in Kimberly, and it's just one of those small towns, right? I'm a small town farm kid from Idaho, right? It was only about 4,000 people. And the beauty about living in a small town, well, the pros and the cons are the same thing. You know everybody and they know you very well, you know. In fact, in high school, the grades 9 through 12, I knew every single person. I knew them by name. I saw them every day, you know, and there's like I said, pros and cons from that come from that. But what the best part of it is, and I look back at now, I can appreciate a lot more is because you knew everybody, right? You were somewhat intimately involved in their lives, and so you develop this instant bond and care and concern and support for your local community, right? Because you know
Mhm.
everybody, and it's this. There's two gas stations in town right across the street from each other, and you know who works there. You probably went to school with them, right? So that part of it was really fun, and I think growing up in that environment has it led to some of the reasons why I love helping people. I love service. I grew up in a single parent home, my mom and 5 kids. So we learned to to receive support from the local community and friends because we needed it, and so I really appreciated that, and I know that that's some of what's been ingrained in me is and has the reasons why I really enjoy serving and helping people around. So I'm grateful that I grew up in such a small town and was able to come back and now raise my own kids in the small town.
Right. Yeah, just that sense of community is something that I feel is lost,
Oh yeah.
especially upon this generation here. You became successful in business, but then you felt something missing. Just talk about like
Yeah.
what you were doing and then that light bulb moment that
Yeah.
sparked the idea of SHP.
Yeah, I was about 35. This is 2012, 35, 36. And Latrell, I'm sure everybody goes through it in some degree, but, I had a good job. I'd been with this company for at that time, about 10 years. And I had been promoted to the vice president of marketing and sales and felt like I was pretty good. It was an outside sales position, but then I came into the office, which wasn't my favorite thing. I loved more being with people out in the community, but it was, I was rising in the ranks, and I was actually going to be buying the organization, buying the company. And so on paper, I mean, I was coaching football. I had a couple of kids. I was in church serving. On paper, I had a great life, but there was something inside me that just wasn't fulfilling. I wasn't being fulfilled. I felt like there was more. I felt like I could do more. And the meaning to life, if you will, and the measures of success that I had, it just didn't. The number of zeros behind my paycheck really didn't matter to me anymore. I mean, I wanted to pay my bills, and of course, I wanted some of the fun toys, but I think you get older, you realize that doesn't really matter anymore. You're not going to take any of that stuff with you when you die, and when you leave it, it only usually causes problems with your kids. What is it that you want to be left? What is it, and what is it that you want to be remembered by? And I think that's what probably bothered me the most is I just I didn't want to be remembered for my job that I did and earn money. It just didn't matter to me anymore. And because of that, it just developed this real hole in my heart. And so this was all going on in my mind for a couple of years. It actually been going on, and it was just getting slowly worse and worse. Well, at this time, like I said, I was coaching football. I was helping with the kids. In fact, my church position that I held was called Young Men's President, which is kind of like
Hmm.
a youth pastor, although I'm not a youth pastor.
Okay.
But I was responsible for the boys group, ages about 12 to 17, the spiritual lessons, but more importantly, the activities that we did during the week. And back then, we adopted the Boy Scout program, right? So during the week, we did Boy Scouts with these kids, and I was kind of like the leader of the Boy Scouts. I didn't always work directly with them, but I was heavily involved. And part of this position, every other week, we get together with other leaders in the church and we talk about things that are going on in the community, whether it was events or what the church was doing. And then we talked about people that needed help, both in the community and in our congregation. Well, there was one particular family. She was the local school bus driver, and the father, he suffered from mental health, just couldn't really hold a job. So, they were struggling. And what kind of caught my ear about these people is they lived in a poor part of town, my small little town that, I rode bikes around my whole life, right?
Uh-huh.
At 9 years old, I scoured the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
They lived in a place I didn't know existed. This apartment complex, and so that really caught my ear first. And then one of the leaders talked about how they went into the home and they were kind of assessing what they need and things of that nature. Well, she had mentioned kind of in passing during this meeting that the kids were sleeping on the floor. And I said, wait a minute, they don't have any beds. Certainly they have like a air mattress or something like that, right? She says, no, they're literally on the hardwood floor with blankets. That's it. And I don't know, LeTroy, that really hit me hard. Like I
Hmm.
pictured my own kids that I had, if they were sleeping on the floor, what that would be like, and I wasn't going to put up with that. It was coming close to Christmas and it was cold in Idaho during December. And to think about kids on a cold floor every night it was hard to think about. And then I thought, oh, you know what? As a leader of a bunch of teenage boys, right? Trying to find an activity that doesn't involve the Xbox or a TV or something like that is a hard thing to do, right?
Hmm.
Especially something that they can enjoy. And I remember thinking, hey, this is a great opportunity that I can get a controller, Xbox controller out of their hands and put a drill in it and teach them something, right? So we'll have a
Right.
good activity. We're going to teach them a skill and it's going to go to a good cause. I mean, it was like the trifecta. And so I got really excited. That night I went home and my daughter had a bunk bed. So I was kind of measuring the bunk bed and figuring out how to build much easier, but how to build this bed with these Boy Scouts for this family because I'd never built furniture before in my life. I mean, I wasn't a stranger to tools. We had built wheelchair ramps and all that kind of stuff, benches,
Hmm.
but when it came to actual furniture used in a home, I never did that before. So it was a fun challenge. And when the kids came over, the boys came over that week, we had a great time. I mean, we spent a few hours, a couple of nights each week building this bunk bed for this family. And, come Saturday, it was time to deliver it to the family. And the word kind of got out in the community, right? It kind of got out in the congregation. Well, all of a sudden, there's like 20, 30 people that showed up at my house, that wanted to be a part of this delivery. And I said, guys, listen, we can't show up with an army of people over here for this family that's got a, two-bedroom apartment. And so me and a couple of leaders stayed back, right? I had to clean my garage and while other people went and the boys did this delivery. Well, the next day at church, they just told me how amazing it was, right? The kids, how grateful they were. I mean, they've never had a bed before, right? And then
Hmm.
and then here's mom and dad, how grateful they were that we provided them a bed, and I didn't get to see any of that. I heard about it, which was amazing, and I was glad the Boy Scouts got to be involved with that. But to be honest with you, I was really jealous. I didn't get to see or experience that. And then it's funny. The next week, it's just funny way life creeps back into us. I was already feeling like going down this rut I was in because, when I built this bed for this family, man, it filled my soul. That hole that I talked about just
Mhm.
instantly got filled. And I remember thinking, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I need. Me personally is really selfish. I need this to feel like I'm making a difference in my life and maybe other people's lives. And so we did this project, and now it was over, and I could feel myself just going back down into this pit,
Yeah.
and I know it wasn't me. I didn't want to be that way. No matter how many pep talks I give myself, it was just hard to shake. I couldn't shake it. So I'm in this turmoil, right? Sitting on my couch, thinking about what we just did the previous week, sitting on my couch, watching Big Bang Theory with my kids, and a commercial come on. And my kids saw it. It was some commercial about an Xbox game or something like that. Well, being at Christmas, I already knew what my kids were going to say. Hey, Dad, can we get that Xbox screen? Could Santa bring it? And I remember thinking, you know what? Gosh dang it! I just delivered a bed to kids that didn't have any. You guys have beds, and you're complaining about not getting this Xbox game because I'm not going to get it for you. It was just one of those. All of these things come together in one moment, and I realized, I can sit here and teach my kids the joy of service, how important it is to be selfless, to appreciate the things are had. I can talk to them about it. Or you know what? Just like I did the Boy Scouts, I can have them actually do it. And so I remember got off the couch and started walking to the garage. And my kids at the time were like, Dad, where are you going? Big Bang's on. And I said, you know what? I've got leftover wood. I'm going to build another bunk bed and you're going to help me.
Yeah.
so, and that's what we did. The next couple of nights, me and my kiddos, we built another bunk bed. Now, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know child bedlessness was a thing, right? I helped the one family I knew that needed it, and so here we have this finished bunk bed, and I remember telling my wife at the time, what do I do? I don't know how to, I don't know anybody else. And she said, well, why don't you throw it on Facebook, one of those buy, sell, trade groups? And I said, really? You want me to put a free bet on there? you know,
Uh-huh.
okay, I guess so. And I was worried about every Tom, Dick, and Harry asking for a free bet because I wanted this to go to I wanted to go to
Yeah.
a child,
A
right?
needy family.
A needy family, right? You take time with your kids, you build something special. I wanted them to know it went to such a worthy cause of a child not sleeping on the floor. And so I wanted to be picky, if that was even going to be necessary. Well, when I posted that, a couple of things happened that really shocked me. The first thing that happened was there was people that commented on that post, people I never met in my life, and friends that I saw haven't seen for 20 years, people I graduated with. And they said, Luke, this is cool. Like, I know of a family that have kids sleeping on the floor. I know of a family that kids are sleeping on crates or sleeping together or sleeping with mom and dad. And the conditions that these posts talked about was just um, it was crazy. Like I didn't know that kids slept in these types of conditions. That was
Yeah.
the first thing. And the second thing that was astonishing was the number of them. There was far more than onesie twosies.
Hmm.
There was a list of people that had posted talking about families that they knew that had kids sleeping on the floor. And
Right.
so it kind of woke me up a little bit on how big possibly this bedlessness thing was. It wasn't just an isolated issue. Well, a friend of mine called me up and said, Luke, I saw your post. I'm a social worker, and um, I've got the perfect family for you. And she was right. And this is my Haley story. So Haley was a 6-year-old girl at the time, never slept on a bed. LeTroy, never. Slept in the backseat of her mom's car. They were homeless, for her whole life. And my friend helped them get their very first house. And so I was excited. I said, "This is perfect. This is exactly the kind of situation that we wanted this bed to go to." So I, took this bed out to meet Haley. And when I walked into the home, you can imagine, I'd seen poverty before. I'd seen transitioning homelessness and all that,
Hmm.
but I never really looked at it or went into these situations with the eyes of a 6-year-old. What do they experience, and what does this mean to them? And because I was there just to help Haley, or at least that's what I thought.
Right.
And so, I walked into this home and there was nothing in the house. There's no couch or chair or anything. There was a hot plate with a can of soup on it, and that was the only thing in the house. But little Haley, you couldn't tell the difference. She was just excited because there was visitors. She was showing off her brand new home, and I said, "Haley, where's your bedroom? Show me your bedroom." So she took us back into her bedroom, and again, you can imagine what it looks like, right? There was holes in the carpet and tears in the wallpaper, and it just wasn't a very clean room, obviously. But the most shocking thing about the room, the one that has stuck with me forever, is in the corner was a pile of clothes, and it was just her nest. It was where she slept. Haley would come home from school, put her PJs on, sleep on her school clothes, and then put them on back in the morning and go to school. And that just shocked me. I mean, I almost got mad at first. It's like, this is going on in my own hometown, and I didn't know about this. This is bull crap.
Hmm.
um, and then I quickly switched to being excited. We were there to deliver a bed to Haley. She didn't know that, so we started bringing in the pieces and started putting it together. And once she realized that this was a bed for her, she erupted. I mean, I thought she was happy before. She came up and hugged me, hugged my friend, these two strange guys, in her house. And then she went up and did something I never saw before. She actually hugged her bed and then kissed it. I mean,
Mm.
have you ever
Wow.
seen a child kiss a bed before because they were so happy to have one? I mean,
Uh-huh.
talk about being naive to a situation like that. I just didn't know. And if that wasn't enough just to melt your heart, you look up and here's mom, single mom, and I was raised by a single mom, right? 6 years of tears pouring down this poor lady's face, and I knew what every single one of those tears meant. I'd seen it in my own mom's face, and
Yeah.
I realized right then, this is way more than just a bed. It's way more than just a good night's sleep for one child. And
Hmm.
so right then and there, we said, okay, you know what? No kid is going to sleep on the floor in my town if I have anything to do with it. So we went back and I started building as many beds as I could.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many different questions I have
Sure.
after all of that. But like, I love the fact that you felt this void internally, and that void was fulfilled by helping others. And a lot of times when that happens, like, a lot of people feel like, the recipient, is the one that's benefiting the most. But a lot of times it's the
Yep.
person doing the giving. So
Absolutely.
so I just love that, for one. And then
It's funny.
you also
I was,
involved. Go ahead, Luke.
oh, sorry. I wanted to mention I was on Mike Rowe's podcast a couple of years ago. Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs guy. Um,
Hmm.
and he brought it up. He says, Luke, he says, you do this. It's kind of a selfish thing, isn't it? And I said, Mike, you're absolutely right. People think, charity work is, you're there helping someone else out for them. And you are, don't get me wrong. But don't kid yourself. You're going to benefit from this as well. Even if the other people don't appreciate it. And there's oftentimes we go into homes where, the mom and dad, it's I hate to say it, but they almost feel entitled to get this bed, or they're so used to being helped that to them they're just not as appreciative as you wish they were. But the child is, right? and
Hmm.
and I tell our chapter presidents, listen, we're there for the child. We're not there for mom and dad. We're there to help the child. And what you find out is, yeah, you're helping the child, but you're also helping yourself. And you're right. It pulled me out of this rut that I was in, and it gave my life a purpose and a passion, probably more than anything, that I didn't realize was available.
hmm
You know?
Like, so even with what you just said about the parents, because I was going to ask you, like how many kids are out there without beds, and how I'm sure it's not an accurate number because there's so much shame in um sharing your circumstances.
Yeah. Well, if I told you, so try to follow me on this.
hmm
There are no national statistics about children without beds, child bedlessness. It's not even a real word, LeTroy, but
hmm
it's a real problem. There's no statistics on it. The only statistics that have come out are what Sleep in Heavenly Peace have put together over the last, 13, 14 years. And we're no statisticians. Don't, this isn't professional stats. This is, hey, we know this town's this big. We receive this many applications. Therefore, across the United States, on average, it's greater than 3% of the total population. So if you have a town of 100,000 people, we know at least 3,000 kids of the 100,000 people don't have beds. And the shocking thing about that, we took that average over the United States. Right now, as you and I talk, the Sleep in Heavenly Peace is sitting on about 160,000 kids on our waiting list, right? Which is a huge number as we cover the United States. But we only cover geographically about 27% of the United States. So what you said is exactly right. There's still 70% of the people out there. It's a good chance that they need beds, but they don't even know that SHP exists. And that's why
hmm
we say 3% is what we do know, but we know it's much, much higher than that because there's greater than 50% of the people that are in need don't even know that this is a solution for them.
Right. All right. So, how did first off, obviously, sleep in heavenly peace comes from Silent Night, but
Yeah. How did
how
that
did you
come
come up?
about?
Yeah, how did you come up with the name?
Oh, this is a funny story. I got after we started delivering more beds, because we got home, we started building more beds. We actually built
hmm
21 beds that first Christmas season. Delivered them all before Santa showed up. It was really fun. And
Uh-huh.
and I'll throw this in too. People have got to understand, this first year we delivered more than beds. We delivered toys and food and all sorts of stuff. But um, and many times the parents said that this is the child's only Christmas present, which was really shocking. It wasn't, and it wasn't. But we were glad. We were sure glad to be able to do that. But as we delivered more beds, we received more applications. And I remember my wife at the time's like, "Well, you probably better call this little project of yours something." And I said, "Don't worry, I got the best name, Beds for Babes." LeTroy, I don't think it made it
Yeah,
2 feet out of my mouth
I was about
before
to say,
it got
did you get
X-named.
slapped?
It's not a good Google search, bro. So no, yeah, that got shot down real quick. And my
Right.
my wife at the time says, "No, no, we're not going to call it that." She says, "How about Silent Night or Sleep in Heavenly Peace?" From Silent Night. And I was like,
hmm
"Oh my gosh!" It just was one of those things that made perfect sense the minute you heard it. We wanted these kids. It was Christmas time. We wanted these kids to sleep in heavenly peace. It was exactly what we wanted them to do. And even though we're not really associated with any religion whatsoever, just Silent Night, we all know, refers to a certain child that didn't have a bed either, right? A very important child to most people. And whether you believe these religious or Christianity or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just a symbol of a child that didn't have a bed that now has one, and now can sleep in heavenly peace. And so it was a perfect name. Yeah.
hmm Wow.
Although I will say, I met Rob Schneider, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
comedian.
I met him at an airport. We're good friends now. he texted me, just a couple of months, well, probably about a year ago now. He texted me, says, Luke, I was thinking about your charity's name. It sounds like a funeral home.
Yeah.
Like,
When I
well,
had
you're not
mentioned it,
wrong. It does kind
when
of
I had
sound.
mentioned it to someone yesterday, sleep in heavenly peace. That's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, it
Like
sounds
it's
like a funeral home. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. I can get that.
yeah.
Dr. Todd McLean provides periodontal and dental implant services in 2 convenient locations. They offer over a decade of experience treating patients, and appointments can even be scheduled in the evenings, weekends, or early mornings. Give them a call in Chapel Hill at 919-537-9774 or in Durham at 919-484-8338, or visit them online at gumsandimplants.org.
So like just talk about how um you took SHP from Kimberly, Idaho, making beds for people in the community to scaling up and to now there's over 400 plus chapters. Like just talk about the growing pains and
Oh,
how you made it happen.
we don't have enough time to talk about the growing pains. I'll tell you that. No, it's beautiful. I'd like to tell you that I'm a mastermind behind the whole thing, and of course I'm not. That it was built on the shoulders of so many amazing people. Our board of directors, the executive teams that I put together, just amazing people. But honestly, it happened because of the mission. I quickly found out that uh, uh, beds for kids was something that no one else was doing. There was one organization in North Carolina called Beds for Kids that actually was a nonprofit that was doing it. That was it across the whole country. I didn't know anybody else that was doing it. I couldn't find anybody. And number two, I started when I started building beds and sharing it on Facebook, and people wanted to be a part of it, and more people. We started building more beds. I started getting calls from CPS, foster care, CASA, all these agencies that work with these families and these kids, and I was like their best friend because they to find a bed for a child is usually the number one hardest thing for them to find. You can find a refrigerator, you can find a desk and a table and all these things much easier than a bed for a child, which at first, back in the day, that was really surprising to me. I'm like, really? That doesn't make any sense. But the more I researched and realized that, yeah, there's no organizations that are doing what we're doing, it made more sense. And then when we started sharing, more people wanted to be a part of this. And so in about 2016 and 2017, we had friends that lived, towns and states away from us that have obviously been watching what we're doing for the last 4 or 5 years. And they said, hey, can we build in our own hometown? And I said, better yet, why don't you just become a chapter? I'll teach you how we're doing it. And then you can do builds and deliver beds in your own hometown. And so we started doing that. So by the end of 2017, we had put on about 7 active chapters in about 5 states. And most of them were friends or family friends that we knew. There's a few of them. There was one in Maryland and there's one in Minnesota that we didn't know who they were. They didn't know who we were. They just happened to fall upon us, and this is what they wanted to do. And so, we were slowly growing organically, but then something happened. In the beginning of 2018, we were featured on a hit Facebook Watch series back when Facebook had Facebook Watch. It
Hmm.
was called Returning the Favor, and it was hosted by the great, Mike Rowe. And what Mike Rowe did, he would go around the country and he would highlight nonprofits and the people that were behind them, and then he would surprise them by showing up, and then he would give them something, whether it was money or a car or whatever they needed. And what we needed the most was a warehouse. We didn't have a good warehouse to take volunteers and build a bed. We had a small little warehouse that was donated to us by an amazing family, but it was cold. It was run down. The windows were cracked. It just wasn't the greatest spot in the world. But what really that show did for us was become a megaphone to the cause and
Hmm.
to us solving that problem of child bedlessness. We received over 5,000 applications for people that wanted to start a chapter, right? It just blew up. And over the next 3 or 4 years, well, I guess now 6 years, we have now grown and trained to over 430 chapter presidents in, I think we're at 48 states now, and in 4 countries. And now we're the largest bed building charity in the world, mostly because there's not very many, but we do build a lot of beds. We built just last year alone almost 90,000 beds, and since 2018, really, we've built over 370,000.
Wow. 370,000 beds.
Yeah,
Wow.
crazy.
Well, well done, man.
Well, again, and it was really, how we got there. There was a lot of bumps and bruises that we learned, and there's some things that we did great that we didn't know we were lucky to do, and there's things that, as an entrepreneur, that's what me and my friends were that helped get this going. We ran it like a business. We didn't know any other way, and that was one of the smartest things we ever did, because it helped us scale. It helped us to grow. It helped us to stay focused on one thing: building and delivering beds for kids. And so when people start a chapter, it's very easy. It's very simple. We made it very simple because, look, if this farm kid from Idaho can do it, anybody can do it. But a lot of people, the barrier to entry in some of these organizations is difficult, and we didn't want that. I knew, LeTroy, that if we wanted to solve child bedlessness in the country, it's not going to be solved by some farm kid from Idaho, right? It's not going to be solved by him and his friends. It's going to be solved by the local community. So if that's true, then we knew we had to put together a program and a platform that people could follow in their own hometown and be successful.
Okay. So walk us through the steps needed to start a chapter.
So anybody can go to our website, shpbeds.org. Now, the unique thing about our website, you'll go there and you're not going to come to some main organization's website. We used to have that, but we have changed all that now. So when you type in shpbeds.org, depending on where you live, the local chapter is going to come up, right? Their main webpage. And we did that for a lot of reasons, mostly because we wanted the people that this is what's going on in your own hometown. This is how many kids are on our waiting list. This is how many beds we've built, right? This is the activities of what's going on. So you can be a part of it, right? Because we wanted people to know that this is a real thing and that there is a solution, and you can be a part of it. So you can donate your money. It all goes, other than 10%, we pull 10% to pay for the whole thing. But 90% and greater of your dollar stays in the chapter you select. All the beds that were built stay in that chapter because it's for those kids there. And so we wanted a very local feel. So you can sign up to become a core team member and help whenever you can. You can sign up to be just part of builds or deliveries. Or if there's not a chapter in your area, then you can sign up. You can hit the tab that says start a chapter. Now, the process to that, this is the steps. This is how easy it is, right? So let's say, LeTroy, you want to start a chapter. Where are you from, bud?
I'm in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale, great. I think we actually used to have one there. I don't know if we still do. There's so many now. I have to go check it. Let's say you want to start. So you're going to fill out a little bit of information, send it in, and then we send you a pre-recorded webinar. And it's basically, I don't know, our marketing team's probably changed it since then, but it used to be me with a slideshow, and it's a 50,000 foot view of who we are, what we do, and what a chapter president does at the 50,000 foot view, right? The most important thing we want, you, LeTroy, to know is what goes into becoming a chapter president, and what is it like when you are one, right? Everybody's biggest concern is how much time does it take, right? What's the effort? And so we want people to know what they're getting into. So once you see the webinar, if you still want to continue, then we send you an application. Now it's about a 7-page application. And really the most important thing about the application, again, is to have you understand what a chapter president goes through. Like, realizing how are you with handling a group of 60, 70 volunteers. How are you about raising money? Are you okay being on media and TV? Because this will happen, right? We just want people to know that's what's going to happen. And when we receive the application, we get to know a little bit more about you too, and some of your skills and some of your weaknesses, so we can help you. And then if you still want to continue after all of that, then you're invited to an actual live webinar. And this is where you'll have members of SHP on the call. A chapter support lead is what we call them, with other people probably interested in being a chapter. And you get to ask anything you want, all the questions you get to ask, and the beauty of where we're at now, most of the time, people have like spent some time or volunteered some time at a local chapter. So they kind of get a good feel of what it's like already, but they can start asking a lot more intimate questions. So after that, if you still are gung-ho and want to continue after that, that's when we schedule you to come to one of our trainings. We train once a quarter. We fly you to Salt Lake City, and for a weekend, we teach you the ins and outs of being a chapter president and actually get you set up. So when you land back home, you are a full-fledged active chapter. And, we put on about 50 or 60 chapters a year. And really, we only lose one or two, mostly because people move or whatnot. But we really only have to close one or two chapters a year. So the barrier to entry is really easy. The support that we offer and provide for the chapter presidents, which is our most important thing. In fact, our corporate office, if you will, is called the Chapter Support Center, the CSC, because that's what we are. We are here just to support those men and women that are really, they're the boots on the ground. They're the ones going in the trenches and doing really the heavy lifting. We're just here as a support system to them. And our chapters are, the biggest concern that people have in starting a chapter is how much time. And I've never asked for money. I don't know how good I'm going to be about, raising money, because we just want these chapter presidents to focus in on three things: raising money, building, and delivering beds. Those three things. All the other stuff that goes into the softwares and the insurances and all, we take care of all of that for the chapter, so they don't have to worry about that. And I tell people, listen, if you've never asked for a single dollar, for a charity in your life, don't worry. All you have to do is tell them your story. Tell them why you started Sleep in Heavenly Peace, and you will never starve. We have some chapters that have hundreds of thousands of dollars in their bank account. I reluctantly say that because I still want people to donate. We still need money, right?
Yeah.
But we value that dollar. We stretch that dollar as far as we possibly can. In fact, I think the new statistics come out that you donate $1 to SHP, because of our ability to stretch those dollars, that dollar actually turns into about $1.30. And so we can, which is what, 30% greater than if you went and bought all the stuff. So we can stretch that dollar quite a bit.
Right. All right. So you're the bad fairy. I'm gonna call you that.
What's funny is I tell chapter presidents, you will become, quote, quote, the bunk bed guy or the bunk bed guy. You will in your community. That's just what you get called. And I mean, what an honor. We have what's called the Bunkhead Club, which is a monthly donation, and you can be part of the Bunkhead Club, Bunkhead. You get labeled as the bed building guy.
Yeah. All right. So like your work has been featured everywhere, on media platforms. Like, how do you stay rooted in the mission as your profile increases?
It's a good question. It's one that I never had to worry about. I remember, Mike Rowe and his crew said, this will change your life, and you may have to be careful how it changes it. And I get it. I understand, I don't get to deliver beds near as much as I used to. I don't get to build them near as much as I used to. I spend most of my time giving speeches and doing podcasts, doing all the PR work, which I love telling the story. I love inspiring people, hopefully that hear my message. And when you don't get to taste the fruits of seeing a child get a bed for the first time, it hasn't deterred me or anything like that. I do miss it. But I've found joy in so many other areas. Like, I go to chapter present training and I speak a little bit and I get to hear their stories, and I get charged by the volunteers and the experiences that they've had, and how it's changed their lives. One day after the Returning the Favor episode aired, we had a bunch of chapter presidents in town. We went to dinner one night, and I remember Jordan, our executive director, now he was the chairman of the board at the time. He asked people two questions. He says, first of all, how did you learn, or why did you become part of SHP? Like what happened in your life to do that? And that was cool. But the second question is the one that shocked me the most. And it was, what has SHP done for you personally? And that was what I didn't expect any of that. I knew what it did for me, but I only knew about me, right? When I started hearing people saying, listen, I was an alcoholic, and this pulled me out of that. Me and my wife were going to get divorced, and now we go on dates because we deliver beds together. I didn't have any relationship with my kids, and now we do this together. I mean, it has brought families together. It's saved marriages. It's brought people purpose and hope, just like it did me, And so that's been the fun part for me now, is to hear and see the changes in these volunteers' lives, and to see the joy that comes from serving these little humans. And so, I don't get to see the kids' side as much, but I get to see the volunteer side more. And that keeps me excited. It keeps me going. I think it's important. You have to stay humble. I do have to remind myself every day, because it's amazing what SHP's turned into. And it's a dream you never thought to dream. I mean, becoming the largest bed building charity in the world from a garage in Kimberly, Idaho is, who thinks like that, right?
Right.
But to see it happen, to stay humble and realize that, I tell people, I may have made the first layup in the basketball game, but there's a whole lot of people that score,
Right.
and that's why we win, is because we do it together.
Yeah, you've been recruiting like Coach K and
Heck yeah, baby.
John Calipari and some of the elite recruiters, getting 5-star volunteers coming in, and chapter owners.
Yeah. And
So
the funny thing is, it's super easy, because, I mean, all you have to say, LeTroy, is, hey, we build beds for kids that don't have any. And if you don't believe that this is a real need, go find out for yourself and then call me back,
right.
and it doesn't take long. You go and talk to a school counselor or a first responder, and not only will you find that the need is huge, it's the circumstances that these kids sleep in, and let's be real, right? These kids are in these situations not because of their choices, right? They didn't do anything to deserve this. And sometimes the parents didn't either. A house fire happens, or someone loses their job, and you just fall on hard times. And that's the other thing. Child bedlessness doesn't know economics. It doesn't know geographic areas. It doesn't know ethnicities, religion, or politics. It doesn't know any of that. It doesn't care. It just attacks, and it just sucks, life from, and possibilities and advantages that these kids deserve. It just sucks it away from them, and it's just a horrible thing. I remember when I delivered that first bed to Haley and her mom, I remember thinking, this mom has focused in on, I need to get shelter, I need to get food, and I need to get clothing for my kids. And that's about the extent of what she can focus in on, right? It was hard enough to just get those three main things. A bed, unfortunately, to her was just a luxury. And that just shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way in our country, especially when we have great men and women and a process that works, that solves that problem. And anybody can be a part of it.
Yeah, so obviously this country is divided at the moment, but I feel like service is the great unifier.
100%. I tell people, if you want true joy, LeTroy, you got to stop looking at yourself, and you got to and look to see how you can help other people. And I think what happens, does your problems go away? Of course they don't, right? They don't just magically disappear. But I promise you, they won't seem near as heavy. They're not going to be you're not worried so much about what your boss thought, or whether you close this account, or whether you're upset with this person or that person, or they're upset with you. It just doesn't seem as heavy, and you come out with a much better attitude, a much better outlook on life when you serve others. And you're right, we're a divided country, but when you step into SHP, and probably other charities too, but I only know SHP, right? When you step into SHP, no one cares what you believe. No one cares what religious or political, affiliate you follow. No one cares about your ethnicity or color or race. It doesn't matter, because we're all there for one purpose only, and that's to provide beds for kids, right? And to bring communities together. And so that unifier just drowns out all the other negativity that comes from, segregation or intolerance or anything like that. So it's just I'm very grateful to live in that culture and live in that environment day in and day out.
Mm-hmm. Great. What's something about you that people would find most surprising?
Wow, most surprising. I don't know, I'm a pretty straightforward guy. Oh, I'm a farm kid from Idaho, so I love hunting, fishing. I love building stuff, whether it's actually physically building stuff like a bunk bed, or
Mm-hmm.
building companies, and helping people out that way. I don't know. Um, I tell people, listen, I'm just a farm kid from Idaho, and I do that for a specific reason, because I want people to know. I don't want people to think that Sleeping Emily P started and grew because Luke Mickelson is this amazing businessman, and went to Harvard and did. No, I have a moderate college education, mostly education through the School of Hard Knocks, um, but I'm just a farm kid, and because of that, I hope people understand that you can do anything. You can be involved, start, and create something beautiful. It doesn't have to be huge. It's just something beautiful in your own life. And a lot of my public speaking is about following your tiny moments, because we have these little sparks of inspiration, or tiny moments where it's like, should I help this person, or should I do that, or whatnot? And the sad thing is, and I'm no different than everybody else, we dismiss them far too easily. We're either don't have enough time, I don't know how to do that, or someone else is doing that, right? It's just all these excuses, when the fact of the matter is, if you just follow those, they probably usually don't take a whole lot of time or effort, and they may not amount to the largest bed building charity in the world, but they will at least inspire others. Possibly it'll help someone else. What I do know, it will help you, right? It'll
Mm-hmm.
help you personally. And the more you can learn to help yourself in a positive way, so you can exude,
Right.
or express positivity to the world, then that's when we're headed down the right path.
Yeah. All right. So, what do you see when you look in the mirror?
Oh, sometimes it depends on the day, brother.
Whether you shaved or not?
Yeah. But right now it's after Christmas. I need to hit the gym.
Uh-huh.
You know, I try to think positive, right? I try to stay positive all the time. I mean, I know people are like, you have to be on cloud nine every day from what you've done, and I'm still a human. I still have ups and downs and emotions, and I work through things just like other people do. And so I think, when I look at the mirror, I try to remember who I am. I try to remember the things that make me happy, so I can be happy. Because I think with whatever emotion or character you express, happy, sad, anger, whatever, those end up coming back to you and finding you. I think those common things. So if you're an angry person or a bitter person or whatnot, those are the things that you're going to get received from other people. I don't want that. I want happiness. I want peace and joy. And so I constantly try to um, put my mind in that state of mind and frame, so I get that back in return. And I have seen a huge difference by doing that. And I interviewed, actually, she was the producer of my episode on returning the favor. Her name's Sarah Yargro, and one of, if not the most positive person I've ever met on the planet. I mean, she get in a car wreck and walk out there smiling. I mean, she's just one of those gals. And I actually interviewed her on my podcast years ago, and I said, Sarah, how do you do this? And she says, Luke, it takes practice. He says, you're an athlete. You're not going to go and learn how to, make a 3-pointer if you don't go out there and practice, right? He says, right. Being positive is no different. You think, and she's right. How many times is, we have a bad day, or something happened, and we just accept being upset or being mad or being sad about it. No, those are opportunities for us to practice to get ourselves out of that. And so I really try to work on that. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
a long
because
answer.
no, it's all good. Yeah, because I can imagine that the circumstances, even though the work that you're doing is putting a smile on their faces, the kids' faces, and it's filling a void within you. I still can only imagine like some of the circumstances you walk into, like it brings a tear to your eye and it breaks you down.
Oh, I tell you, LeTroy, I can tell you, I can show you videos, I can show you pictures, I can have testimonials all day long of what it's like to deliver a bed to a child. But unless you're in the room, right? Unless you see little Johnny who's hiding behind mom, embarrassed or slightly apprehensive, maybe even scared that there's these groups of people that they don't know are in his room. They're in his room making all sorts of noise and racket, and then all of a sudden little Johnny recognizes that, oh, these people are building me a bed. I've never had one. And all of a sudden this shy, slightly afraid kid comes out from behind mom, grabs a drill, and starts helping these strangers, right? To see that and to feel that and to see the smile. It's something that you can't express or share without or feel the same unless you're in the room, right? It's just that life changing. It's that emotional. And yeah, to experience that is for me anyways, is none other, right?
Hmm. Yeah. What's next?
Well, lunch. No. Just kidding, bro.
Same here.
I think you mean a little further down the road.
Yeah.
We're excited. Like, I'm still trying to build more of a platform for me to share my message, right? I came out of the executive director role a couple of 3 years ago, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best way for me to share this message. And because child bedlessness is so unknown. And if your listeners right now take away one thing, or let me ask of you one thing, is just share that child bedlessness is real, and share that at least of an organization called Sleep and Emily Peace that is solving it. Because this problem is still going to remain unknown. It's going to remain, people are going to be shy and not say that they have an issue because they don't know there's a solution until they know there's a solution, right? And there is one. So we have to share that. We have to express that there are kids we know that are in your audience's hometown right now. I promise you, there are kids. I bet you even know the family, but you don't know that the kid doesn't have a bed. Share this with everybody, and you may actually spark a little bit of inspiration for these families to apply, or at least share the information. And now they know they can get a bed for their child, all because one of your listeners actually opened their mouth. And so, that's what's for me for the future, is getting on as many platforms as I possibly can to share this message of hope and peace, not just for the children, but also for our volunteers. That was the other thing I think our mission completes, is not just child bedlessness, but I learned a long time ago, LeTroy, that there's millions of people in our country. I mean, millions that want to help. They just don't know how, right? They want to give back. They've spent their lives maybe being supported or whatnot, or they're in their position of life now where they they can give back. They just don't know of a worthy or a good cause yet, something that strikes home to them. And if Sleep in Heavenly Peace does, then jump on board. Go to our website, find your local chapter. We're big in Facebook, so you type in Sleep in Heavenly Peace and your town, you're probably going to find the local chapter, or go to their website. You can be a part of the solution, and I promise you it'll change your life.
All right. And the website is shpbeds.org.
Yep.
All right.
That's
So
it.
before we wrap, leave us with a parting shot. Like, for people that want to serve, they don't have the time, the money, or the influence. Like, what do you say to them?
Oh, you can always do one thing, just like I mentioned, and that's just share the message, right? Donations and volunteering are very important, but honestly, your voice means something, and you just never know. You could be talking to someone in the grocery store and mention Sleep in Heavenly Peace, and someone an aisle overhears it, and they've been struggling, or their sister's been struggling, or their neighbor. You just never know. And so sharing that message, everybody can do that. That's free. That doesn't take any time, but it's the most valuable thing that we can do. I mean, I tell chapter presidents, you don't have to share my story. You got your own story, and people want to hear your story because that's what's authentic. That's what's real to them. LeTroy, you can go to your friends and say, "Hey, I interviewed this Luke Mickelson guy, and oh, that's a cool story." But if you go on a delivery and you share your little Joey or your little Haley story, that's what people listen to. That's what they want to hear, and everybody can do that.
All right. Well, Luke Mickelson, Sleep in Heavenly Peace.
Yeah, baby.
Combating child bedlessness. Thank you for your work. Thank you for recognizing a need that is often silent. That people are afraid to even, share their predicament a lot of times, and going the extra mile, and, bringing your family along, bringing your Boy Scouts along, and just continuing to grow. Like, it became contagious.
Yeah.
And now 400 plus chapters around the world. Like, you're really making an impact. So I salute you, and keep that smile on your face. Stay positive.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
like I said, the website is shpbeds.org. So I hope that I hope that my platform increases the amount of chapters and involvement. So thank you for your time today, sir.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet your audience, and hope to see someone out there. Reach out to me if you have any questions. My email is luke.mickelson@shpbeds.org. I don't mind sharing that because if I can direct someone to positively change their life, then you're not only going to change your life, you're going to change the life of the people around you. And Sleep Heavenly Peace is one of many, but one avenue I would encourage anybody, especially if this really strikes a chord with your heart. Follow that, lead that, have the courage to take action, because you will make a difference.
All right. All right. Thank you again, Luke. And for Stop, Look, and Listen, I'm your host, LeTroy Gardner. See you next week. Peace and blessings.